Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kelly and Gail. I am the Gail part.
That would make me the Kelly part.
And it has been a few weeks since we did one. I think we did one 2 weeks before the end of the year.
I think so.
So it's been a little bit since. So, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope anyone else who's in the Midwest that they've stayed warm through these frozen temperatures and snow and everything else that's going on. Welcome back. We're probably going to do this every 2 to 3 weeks, but we'll give you guys a heads up we'll always advertise it before we do it so that you guys can find us and that you know. One of the things that we decided we were going to, and we have a bunch of questions from people who wrote in this time ahead of time and asked us questions because she's in Germany and she can't ask them live because it's 2 in the morning in Germany.
Right.
So we wanted to talk about fitting in and what that means and what that brings up.
Most of we'll call them spiritually inclined people that I know have never fit in.
Uh-huh.
We've just collectively, as a group, have never fit in, at least not with normal people.
And with that said, though, there's such a sense of wanting to feel like you belong
Yeah.
and that you're seen.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm bringing it up is because I just had an issue with this, recently. And I usually use our show to talk about what's going on with me, because I figure if I'm going through it, other people are going through it.
Yep.
And that might not always be the case, but I think finding your tribe and finding your group and finding the people that you fit with can be a very arduous process for some people.
Yeah. Very. Yeah. Yeah. It's different for everyone, but overall, I think we just, as much as you want to fit in,
Mhm.
you can't. And I know when I was a kid, somebody reminded me about this the other day that has known me that long. And they said when I was so desperate to make friends and feel like I fit in, that I've always been very observant and I will watch people and I would notice, okay, this person likes that kind of stuff. This girl likes butterflies. And I would notice everything that they liked. And then I would magically make all of these things appear on their desk before they arrived at school. And it was just like, wow, who did this? And I was too afraid to say it was me. But there was always this one friend who always knew. And the other day she was reminding me that I used to do that kind of stuff. And it's like I was torn between desperately wanting to fit in and desperately wanting these people to be my friends and knowing that they were never going to be my friends. It was not going to happen. And I think a lot of us go through that or have gone through that.
Mhm. I when I was a practicing therapist, I'm going to refer to it that way because I still work in the field, but I'm not doing therapy anymore. And I remember I would always use this example, and I needed to remember this for myself. Because I heard this guy who wrote a book, and he went around talking to grammar schools. And he's like, when do you think you lose your spark? And the sixth grade girl raises her hand, and she's like, you lose your spark when you start to think more about what other people think of you than you think of yourself. And that fits in so much with the fitting in, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
we start to think about how other people are seeing us or what's important for other people or what other people want from us, that we then lose what's important for us. And I was reminded of that this weekend. So I think that it's just about how do you authentically be yourself out in the world, and then you will attract the people that you're meant to be with.
And what happens when you find your authentic self, finally, after searching for years, and your partner doesn't feel the same way?
Mhm.
I've had many students lately with that very issue, including the one I talked about before the show, But it's really because if you're in that kind of a relationship where you're very close to someone and you're used to sharing things with them, and all of a sudden you start talking about things like, I saw a ghost the other day, or angels are real, or what do you think about aliens? And they look at you like you've got 5 heads.
Uh-huh.
That's a real rude awakening that you're with the wrong person. So sometimes our desire to fit in makes us be less of who we are because you're afraid to lose that connection.
Or
Um,
rock the boat.
yeah, yeah. So that's part of fitting in a very destructive, I think, way,
Mhm.
because if you're giving up who you are to try to keep the peace, that's not good, guys. That's not good. So don't do that. Wake up sooner than that.
So
But
if you're, go
no,
ahead.
but if you're starting out and you're excited about everything, how do you keep it in? How do you not tell people around you?
Well, I think it's also about learning who you can talk to about it, so people don't look at you like you have 3 heads,
Yeah.
you
But if
know?
this is your significant other and you've never had these conversations before,
Mhm.
it's weird. I've heard a lot about that lately. It seems like people who are waking up, and we are all waking up at different levels, I think, on a
Mhm.
different timeline, but humanity's waking up. So what happens when one person is awake and the other person is like, you have gone insane, you have lost your mind? That's kind of a sticky situation. That's why I tell people, don't talk about it.
Well, a couple things. One, if you're watching us live and you have questions, please put them in the comment section. And second, I think that it is much harder to be who you really are out in the world than people
Mhm.
think. It takes so much, I would say, courage to fully be yourself out in the world
Yep.
because there is so much of the wanting to feel like you belong, the wanting to feel like you're part of things. Like I know a lot of people that I've talked to were the black sheep in the family growing up, right? Because you were the one who saw everything, you were the one who noticed everything, you
Yep.
were the one that pointed out everything,
Yep.
And so it's like that pattern is, which leads us to kind of that first question: how can I release change? How can I release and or change unconscious thought patterns and beliefs that might be governing my behaviors and decisions that are limiting me or not serving me anymore?
The first thing I'm going to say to that is you're thinking too much. If it is your subconscious and you're spending all of your time thinking about your subconscious and how do you let go of that? Well, you've put yourself in a vicious spiral, at least from my perspective, because I have done that myself.
Mhm.
You know, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking this? Why am I holding myself? And by questioning yourself like that, you kind of are holding yourself back. You've kind of put yourself in that,
Mhm.
you know, I'm going around and I'm going
So
around and
let,
I'm going around.
let me ask you this question then. So, as an empath, how do you navigate the world when there's so much fear?
I isolate myself completely.
Okay, well, that's not always the answer. Some of us still have to go to work and interact with people. And I mean, I was thinking about it, and that was sort of one of the questions that was asked too is how do you not get sucked into fear? Because so much of our world right now is fear based of what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Are we going to have a world? Are we not going to have a world? Is there going to be World War III? How do you, as an empath, not get pulled into that?
You have to make a deliberate choice that you are not going to get pulled into it.
Mhm,
Stop watching the news, at least for a while. Stop reading about all the horrible things that are going on in the world. You have to like wipe the slate clean.
mhm,
And you have to say, okay, I'm removing all of this. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to have dreams about it. I'm not. And then when you catch yourself going back down that road, change your change your focus.
Okay, I'm going to throw a wrench in that.
Okay.
So, what happens when you're getting guidance from your angels, masters, teachers, loved ones, light beings, multidimensional beings that you need to be involved in it?
What I do, well, first off, I argue with them every single day. So this is coming from someone who already doesn't take direction well, um, or follow the rules. But you really have to stand your ground. You may be guided to do something, but are they giving you specific instructions? You can
In
ask,
my case, usually yes. It's
yeah,
usually to
usually they
create.
do, but
It's usually
not
to create
everyone
a
gets that.
development world, but yeah.
Yeah, but there might be ways to help without getting yourself that involved.
Mhm.
Every day when I meditate, I send love to people, I send healing to people, I send it and I let it go. And that's kind of what you have to do sometimes. And it is perfectly okay to argue with your guides. They really don't care. They don't mind. Someone
If
is
anyone
saying
else,
there's no
yeah,
sound.
if anyone else is having problem with sound, let us know. From my
Um,
end, it seems I can hear everything Kelly's saying.
yeah, I
Yeah.
so
So I think it's just, I think we live in really, it's like Earth One and Earth Two,
right,
right?
right,
There's the people who are waking up who are kind of on Earth Two,
right.
and there's the 3D world that we're all still currently living in, which is Earth One, which a lot of us
Well,
don't
most of
want
us are
to live
anyway.
in. What?
I said, well, most of us are anyway. It's important, I think, to be aware of what's happening,
Mhm,
but it's really not important to involve yourself or make it so personal.
mhm.
And I think that's where people kind of mess up is they make it too personal.
And apparently, all I want to do is throw wrenches and things. So now I'm going to throw this at you as well. So I have a friend who's a transport medium,
Hmm.
and when there's a war or catastrophe, she has to help hundreds, if not thousands of people. I mean, she doesn't really get a choice.
Right,
She
right.
could
Well,
say,
that's a higher purpose situation. If you have one of those, your life has probably been, rather traumatic, dramatic, and less than happy most of your life. I think some of us have signed on for that, but I think the numbers of people that have actually signed on for that are far less than probably we need, but they're far less than people want to think. I've talked to 7 different people in the last couple of weeks, all of whom profess to be the chosen one. And there's so much of that going on in the spiritual community and with different teachers. I had someone they profess to be a shaman. I've I've studied shamanism for 18 years. I kind of know a thing about it. And they're telling me that you are chosen from birth. Maybe, but don't you think someone who may not have been chosen can still study, can still learn things? So I think there's a lot of teachers who are teaching things that may not be true. You
well,
know,
I think what we're also dancing a little bit around is what's ego.
yeah, yeah.
Because I know so many teachers who get caught in their ego.
And that's a hard thing for a lot of people. Um, it's if you're surrounded by people who are constantly building you up and telling you how wonderful you are, you have to really have a huge depth of humility to
Mhm.
counteract that. I've seen people that didn't start out the way they are now, and they have really gone, you know, not in the right way.
So one of our viewers wrote, "How about you ask for the toolbox that will give you the ability to transmute your fears so that you can shine light into it? Also, maybe we're all the chosen ones, as everyone's note is important." And I think that's so true. We're all our own lighthouse, right?
Right.
It's up to us as to how bright we want that beacon of light to shine and what we're really putting out in the world. There's people who are afraid of their light and
Yeah, there
afraid
are.
of what they can do and how they can do it. And so they dim themselves or they play small. And we're at a time in humanity right now where we need everyone to fully be who they are,
Right.
to shine as bright as they can shine.
Yep, absolutely. And, by chosen one, I was talking about people who make themselves overly ego inflated. Well, that's the nicest way I can put it. Truly, it is. That was being nice. Yeah. But that's, yeah.
To change it, somebody wrote to change into the other timeline, Earth 2, where there is peace. It's enough to say, to stay with oneself and heal and love and not necessarily become an activist. With
Oh,
that,
absolutely.
enough. The thing is you have to do what resonates with you.
Right.
Some people want to take their gifts and teach. And like I know for Kellie and I, we really enjoy doing the podcast and just having these conversations because I think it's important to normalize all of it. Because I
Yep.
know when I went through my opening 20 years ago, and I was one of those people who they kept telling me how great I was. And, look what I like every time I'd walk in a room, I felt like my head was supposed to spin around in circles or something. And I'm like,
Right.
you know, I think that it's just about us each being ourselves, and that is always enough. And however you want to do things, if it feels right to you, then that's the way that it needs to be done for you. There's
Right.
no one right way to send energy to the earth. There's no one right way to do readings. There's
Yep.
no one right way to do healings. Every single person on this planet has a different frequency and a different vibration. Different things are going to resonate. And now I'm done on my soapbox.
But that's very true. It's just due to paranormal stuff that I'm involved in. I work with a lot of different religious leaders, even
Mhm.
if I'm getting a 5 of 10. Um, but everyone has the same basic, we want to pull together, we want to help these people, and then we want to leave and let them stay helped. And that's kind of the way it should be. Everyone has their own thing to offer,
Mhm.
and everyone has different gifts. Everyone has gifts, they just don't realize it, or they don't choose to develop them, and that's fine too. But you need to recognize that who you are and what you are doing is exactly perfect for you.
I know that I've had several teachers, and we've talked about my experiences with teachers in the past on past episodes. But I've had a lot of teachers tell me, no, you need to do it this way. And I'd be like, why? Why do I need to do it that way? Like
Right.
when I was learning to draw sacred geometry, they're like, well, you have to use a compass and you have to do it this way. I'm like, but why? You can create it this way and it's a hell of a lot faster. Why wouldn't I do it that way? So, it's just, again, it comes back to how we started the whole podcast tonight, fitting in. We tend to sometimes put ourselves down because we think we're doing it wrong.
Right.
It's if we do it the way that we're doing it, then we don't fit in with everybody else.
And sometimes that is a blessing. I have just been floored recently with one particular person that I'm have worked with years and years ago, and I know where they came from, and I know what they used to teach, and to have what happened happen. Well, if you can't afford my fees, you can't have my energy. Whoa, excuse me, but that is actually what happened with someone that I know. You have to watch that when you're becoming spiritually, you're not enlightened yet. You're really not. You're on the road to that. You're learning things.
Isn't that the title of your first book? What's your
What?
first book? On the
Oh, when on the road to enlightenment, don't forget to take out the trash. Um,
I've always loved that title.
well, it was a tongue-in-cheek insult to someone that I am now divorced from. So, it was, you have to stay with what you are and who you are. There's no competition here. It's not, I have to get to this level, or aren't I so great that I had a student that asked me this. She says, I think I need a big teacher to study with because I think I've just learned so much that I'm just, really big and bold and I'm going to save the world. And I went, sit down. And there's so much
Again,
of that going on.
does that mean that's the ego kicking in to pull us off the path of where we really need
Right.
to be? Because the ego oftentimes takes us off our path
Yep.
because you can't continue your path if you're having those, sorry, I'm going to use stronger words, overblown inflation of what you can really do.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And everyone is doing their thing. And
Mhm.
that's exactly the way it should be. It's not a competition. You just do you. And that's what we need you to do. Everyone needs to do what they can do. Yeah. But
Every time we start talking about kind of this topic or it comes up, I always see humanity like on a holodeck from Star Trek going, this is what we're creating.
right.
We all choose to make different choices. And if we choose to all show up and be our light, the way that the world looks is going to be very different.
Yes. The world needs every one of us.
What do we want to actually create?
Yep.
And
Yep.
again, welcome to all our viewers who are watching us live. If you have questions or want to have us talk about something or say, yeah, that's great, because we've gotten a lot about that was an awesome, so great reminder. It's a matter of opinions. Like you said, we all do it differently. And I've had a lot of teachers tell me I'm doing it wrong.
I had to. And some people miss the point. It's not about creating clones. We're not clones. We're human beings, and we're not supposed to be clones. So, yeah.
And we can all hold the same knowledge and we can all interpret it differently. So the example I always used to give with that, like when I was a practicing therapist, um, is let's say I put your family on a vacation and there was 4 of you on the trip. You all went to the same restaurants, you were in the same transportation together, you did the same activities together. And then after the vacation, I put you all in a different room and I said, explain the vacation to me. I would get 4 completely different stories,
Yep.
even though you did absolutely everything identically.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah. Because
that's
we're all different. Yeah.
And that's the important piece. The truth is always somewhere in the middle of all of it. It's not one person, it's not the other person. It's the space between where the truth really resides. And apparently, I want to use hand gestures today.
We're Italian today. Yeah. Um, Going back to the news thing,
Mhm.
I've heard people say they have to listen to the news because that's where they know to send energy. And I'm of the belief that you need to take a break every once in a while.
Well, but it also depends on then which news station you listen to and
Right,
what slant the news has. So I
right,
think it's more for me. I mean, sometimes I'll watch the news because it's just interesting to me. But I think that it's about internally, where do you feel like you need to send energy? What's your guidance telling you as to what you need to do to help
right.
the planet or situations or things like that?
Yep.
So someone wrote, yes, the collective seems to go through so much at the same time. The awakening dark night of the soul.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's just all so interesting. And most of us who are empaths are also observers, right? We kind of like to sit back and observe and watch what's happening, and then kind of from that figure out what needs to get done. And so it's just I slow down. I can't talk that fast. Um, they're laughing at me, by the way, because I said that. Because usually I never talk back to them, and they're just cracking up. They think that's hysterical. They want us to all be very conscious
Yeah.
of how we treat ourselves and what we put out into the world. And the example that I've always used is, when we're talking on our cell phones, it's beaming the signal to space and then beaming it back to us. Now, think for a minute how many people are screaming and yelling on their cell phones. And then just imagine that we've sent that all out into space and that's what's getting beamed back to us.
Right.
So, to just be really conscious of how we do things and to be in the present moment, because honestly, that's all any of us really have is the present moment. That's all we have impact in. That's all we can do to change things is what you're doing in this moment.
Right. Yep.
And there's talking about tons of science fiction movies in my head right now. And for those of you who haven't heard me say this before, the name of my book, it's called I Don't Know How I Know, I Just Know, but the title I wanted to call it was My Life is a Bad Science Fiction Movie. Because of all
Write that book.
what?
You should still write that book.
Because of all the weird, wacky things that have happened to me or experiences that I've had, and you think you're the only one having those experiences.
Not.
And that's another reason why we created this podcast was to show you that you're not the only one.
No.
There's a lot of us
Absolutely
out
not.
there who are having the same type of experiences. It's just no one feels comfortable talking about them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She had another question. What was one of her other
There were
questions?
many other questions, but I'm not sure how to answer this one. So if anyone who's watching us live has an answer for this one, I'd love to hear your feedback. What is the significance of the pattern in the flower of life, and how does one best benefit from it and incorporate it into meditation, healing, or healing practice?
Um, well, as the Jewish person, you should probably talk about the flower of life. Yeah, it's
I'm going to give a very non-traditional answer. The
it's
flower
life.
of life is a symbol that was left for us to uncode information that we need as we continue to move forward on our path.
Yeah. It really symbolizes life, like in the universe, not just for us. So I'm not sure. Again, you're thinking too much. It's one of the things that I was taught is everyone is a piece. If one piece is missing from a puzzle, it's never complete.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I had a teacher that explained that in that manner, I was like, it's pretty. Yeah. But that kind of made sense to me as it's the whole, it's all the pieces of the whole.
And one of our viewers just wrote, it shows how our souls overlap and share the same energy, and it is a way to connect with infinity symbols everywhere and blossom together.
Yeah, we're all pieces of the whole. That's what, yeah. I in my experience, having students that questioned every little thing
Mhm.
makes them know things, but they don't feel the knowledge. If you are so in your head that you have to ask infinite numbers of questions about things instead of appreciating their beauty and appreciating their peace in this spiritual path, you're kind of shortchanging yourself. I study everything. I go down rabbit holes all the time.
We have to address this part of it now.
Okay.
And so when you have had trauma early in life, which a lot of us have had, and that's the reason why a lot of us are empaths and things like that. And when we've had trauma early in life, we tend to not trust our feelings.
Mm.
And our feelings sometimes aren't valid because they were oftentimes overlooked in traumatic situations and or dysfunctional families. So the way that you start to see the world is kind of this cerebral version of the world. So how do you learn to balance? And it goes back to kind of the flower of life. How do you learn to balance body, mind, spirit, and soul? Because we're all things. We're soul and a spirit having a physical experience on earth, and and our mind is connected to all of consciousness. So how do you learn to balance all of those components together? Yeah,
I do it the hard way. Like I do everything.
not only knows who I'm talking to tonight, but they seem to want to give me very technical answers and everything. And Metatron is laughing. He's like, "Who do you think it is?"
Yeah.
Okay, Metatron. And so I have never said this in the show before, but I'll say it tonight. So, um, oftentimes Metatron and Maitreya are with me, and they're like two of my guides who are always with me. And so, and they think it's funny. I mean, I would never be disrespectful, so I call them the M&M twins. I can always tell when they come in because my whole energy shifts like now. So they're just having some fun with me during this podcast today. So as you can tell, my energy is a little bit different than it normally is. I'm having trouble speaking and getting words out and getting coherent sentences out. But I'm along for the ride. They're just laughing. They just think it's the funniest thing. So yeah, I refer to them as the M&M twins. And they are definitely here standing behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
just thought I'd share that with all of you. I've never talked about that before, but yeah.
That's funny. I think balancing is like anything else. We're all individuals.
Mhm.
The issues that I had as a kid in a very traumatic, over dramatized, very dysfunctional family. I tell people the term dysfunction was made when a social worker came to my house when I was a kid. And they said, oh, dysfunction, that's what we'll call it. I went more inside my feelings. I don't remember large blocks of time from my early childhood because I wasn't in my body. I was like, okay, I'm out, bye. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think there are other people that had those similar experiences and went more inside themselves.
Yeah, I believe that's referred to in psychological terms as dissociation.
Yes, it is. I know. I also was once a therapist.
Is never going to leave.
But it really is important to figure out who you are with each one of those. You need to be, mental and totally let's think this through and let's be in body and let's do this. But you also need to know who you are as a spiritual being. Who are you in your heart? And that's the only thing that saved me was animals when I was a kid, because an animal never broke my heart unless they died. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that about people. Well, and I know I'm not the only one there.
A lot of people don't remember their childhoods for various reasons. And there's other people who remember every aspect of their childhood
Right.
It's a way of protecting ourselves in order to be able to survive and grow up so we can become adults. And so that's that whole movement of inner child work, right?
Right.
Because a
Right.
lot of times people don't have a childhood because of the circumstances in which they grow up. So now you need to kind of learn to reparent yourself and have compassion for yourself. And I've told this story before. I had this great aunt who would just walk around and say, why don't you just be kind and gentle to everyone you know and yourself? And I'm like, I'm 5. Who says that to a 5?
Right.
But,
Yeah.
as I got older, I'm like, she was right. I mean, she obviously had a lot of the gifts, but in her day, like, she couldn't go into any high-rise buildings in Chicago because she would feel them moving,
Right.
and everyone labeled her as crazy. In today's world, everyone would be just like, "God, you're so sensitive that you
Right.
notice that. That's a really cool thing."
Right. Right.
And I guess some of it depends the times that you grew up. So, they want me to talk a little bit about this. I told you they are just
Go with it.
So they want me to talk a little bit about, there's indigos, crystals, rainbow children, supposedly that started coming in the 80s. And I want to be very clear that some of us came back sooner because we had to pave the way for the kids who came
Yep.
in the 80s. So if you feel like you resonate with one of those, you are.
Yeah.
Because people get so, well, they didn't come in till the 80s. I'm like, that is not true.
That is not
They
true.
came in much earlier because people had to start to pave the way for us to get to where we are now.
Yep.
Yes, those kids are amazing and they're wired differently and they can do amazing things. But some of us are also wired like that who are older, which is also why we never fit in.
Right.
Because a lot of the things that kids thought about while we were growing up, we thought were stupid. I'm like, why are we spending time talking about this or this? This is what really needs to happen in the world. So,
Yep.
it's all connected, and it's time that we start to put those pieces together.
Yep. Absolutely.
Again, done with my soapbox now.
Yeah. I think it's funny how we attract the students that need us. I've had more people lately talk about being able to, in elementary school, being able to hear what another kid thought about them.
Mhm.
And I'm like, whoa, me too. And it's kind of fun being the adult portion of that child because now it's like we're all coming somehow together and making those connections.
I know people now that I was talking to when I was a kid, and we were telepathically communicating, but we didn't meet till we were older physically. So
Yeah.
it's just really interesting. Can we talk? Yes, in future shows, we'll talk about more about indigos, crystals, and rainbows because we're running out of time for today's show. But we probably will come back and circle back around to crystals, indigo,
Yep.
and rainbow children.
Yep.
Um, so, anyone else have any other things you want us to cover in future shows? I'm writing it down so I don't forget.
But will you remember where the paper is?
I'm going to tape it to my wall because otherwise I will forget where the paper is. So, thanks everyone for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Metatron and Maitreya, because you have been in control of this whole show. So thanks everybody for hanging out with us, and we'll let you know probably about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. We'll be back for the next episode. So
Yep.
if anything comes up between now and then, feel free to reach out to Kelly or myself, and we will see you guys all again soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.